It's Tuesday, August 7th. I'm Scott.
I'm Rim.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we talk about our personal preferences for first-person shooter key bindings. Let's do this. So, not too long after we did a show about how it's not video game season, it's video game season.
Well, at least for Scott. I'm not quite there yet.
You're not quite there. What's wrong with you?
I'm mostly reading books and doing computer stuff.
Yeah, I'm doing that stuff too. But I have definitely significantly decreased the German board gaming. And I significantly decreased the anime watching. And the video gaming has snuck up in there.
See, I've actually increased my video game... Well, not my video game, God. My anime watching. And the only reason we haven't been playing board games is that we've been busy.
Yep, and when it seems maybe that's what it is that when we're too busy to play board games, you only have time for a video game in there. Because a board game, you got to get a bunch of people to sit around for a few hours. And DS can go just about anywhere at any time.
It also didn't help that we usually only play board games now on the weekends. And last weekend I did stuff. Mostly Geeknights stuff.
And this weekend, probably also doing stuff. Like playing video games.
I'm actually foreseeing the board game. I mean, the only video game I want to play is the new Strikers game we picked up finally.
Yep, I picked that up. I'm also playing Dynamite Heady and the original Paper Mario on the Virtual Console, which are like the only two things on the Virtual Console worth the money. And there's a bunch of stuff I'm going to talk about in my news that I'm also playing. And DS action with the Pokemons and the Planet Puzzle Leagues, etc.
See, I'd started playing Pokemon again at the shore, but I got sick of that real quick.
You were playing it yesterday.
I was playing it for a little bit yesterday, and then I swapped back in Advance Wars.
I'm just saying, you did play it. I heard it on.
Yep.
Going
I played it bit, but never more than like 15 minutes at a time. I can't stomach more than 15 minutes of Pokemon.
I know. I'm actually playing Leaf Green on the train again just to beat it.
Oh, Fire Red is so much more fun than the DS one.
I know. At least for single-player action, it's so much better just because the combat is a reasonable speed, or at least it feels like a reasonable speed compared to Diamond and Pearl.
It's a lot faster, and my little dude walks a lot faster, and the plot is more plotty, and...
It's the original Pokemon plot for the original Pokemon game. It's every Pokemon plot since then has just been not as good.
Because it's always the same. It's, all right, you're a kid. Here's your first Pokemon. You pick one of the three. Oh, no, you have a rival. Oh, you pick the one that's strong against you. Then you go out and catch a Rattata, and then you go off on your adventure.
I don't catch a Rattata or a Pidgey.
In fact, I caught a Pidgey and leveled it all the way up.
See, I go and I use my main guy, and I go straight for the bug forest, and I get me...
bugs are crap. There's no good bug Pokemon.
Butterfree.
Butterfree can lick my balls.
Dustox.
Dustox is worse than Butterfree.
That scorpion thing that turns into the bigger scorpion thing is that's a bug.
Bug Pokemon suck.
You suck. Bug Pokemon own you.
I don't like bugs.
This is the one that looks like Mothra.
Except bees, and I don't like...
Combee.
You know, Combee is probably the only bug Pokemon I respect, but Combee evolves.
Only the female Combees. And actually, I would use a male Combee because I don't like the Vespiquen thing. It's ugly. Whatever. No more Pokemon talk today.
Whatever. So what do you got in the news?
Only like the biggest gaming news in a zillion years.
I will admit, Scott came running when he read this and told me, and it was a big deal. And I was real excited until the cynical side of my brain said, wait a minute, Rim. There's no way that this is exactly what you actually want. And upon further questioning...
It's not my fault you want something that's pretty much infeasible and impossible and not going to happen.
I think the real question is, it's not your fault that the only reason I wanted it is for that. If it doesn't have the thing that it doesn't have, then I don't give one shit about it because I already own most of those games.
That's your problem. Anyway, so... You may know that there are many video games made by a company called id Software, mostly Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake. Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake mostly, but also Commander Keen, Heretic, and Hexen.
Quake 2.
Quake 2,
Doom
Quake 3,
2.
Doom 2, Doom 3, yes.
Even though I gotta say that in all those things, it seems like the 2s were the best in every series. Quake 3 was garbage. Doom 3 was slightly less garbage. Doom 2, best FPS ever.
I guess so. I guess on average, the 2s are much better.
I mean, Quake 2 compared to Quake 1 or 3, it's better than both of them
except Commander
combined.
Keen. All the Commander Keens are good. Anyway.
Yeah, Commander Keen is a whole different world.
So id Software.
Plus, who's in Doom 2?
Doom Guy.
No, who else?
John Romero.
Who else?
Commander Keen.
That's right.
Anyway, so id Software makes all these games. These are very important games in the world of PC gaming and gaming in general.
Yes.
Super important.
Regardless of what a lot of people say, Wolfenstein was really the first FPS. Doom was, I would argue, the first good FPS.
You suck.
I don't like
You
Wolfenstein.
suck. It's Wolfenstein isn't, while it looks like an FPS, a shooting game, it is actually a maze game. A maze, find your way around, find the secret doors, and collect the treasure game.
Extremely two-dimensional, mostly not, well, in fact, unless...
If you want to complain, it was no more two-dimensional than Doom.
No, because Wolfenstein couldn't have angles of walls that differed by anything. They had to be 90 degrees or 180 degrees.
Yep.
You couldn't have angles or anything interesting. You couldn't have
That's
elevation
because it
or
was a
anything
maze.
interesting.
Doom didn't have real elevation because if you shot...
You know what, though? It had effective elevation.
It wasn't effective. You didn't have to aim up or down.
No, you didn't have to aim, but you still had to take that into account in the puzzles.
Not really.
Yes, you did.
You could flatten any Doom map.
Yeah, you can, but you still had to take it into account because while technically it's only 2D and the third dimension is just a coordinate number that doesn't actually do anything, the fact remains that the imp looks higher and he's up on that ledge, and you can't get up on that ledge unless you find a lift to get up there.
Well, anyway, the point is, id Software makes a lot of these games, so they did. And it has been very difficult for a long period of time to play a lot of these games legally or at all.
Well, except for, Doom,
Right.
Doom 2, Quake 2.
Well, the problem is that while the source code to many of these games is freely available, the actual levels, the WAD files or what have you, are owned by id Software, and if you want them legally, you had to pay for them. And sometimes it was hard to get them if you didn't own them already. And a lot of the DOS games were difficult to play because you don't have a computer with DOS, and they don't run just out of the box in Windows XP all the time, so you need to set up some sort of emulation with DOSBox or something like that. And, these very important games in gaming history were pretty much unavailable to the gaming public for a long period of time. I mean, there was, if I remember, just less than a year ago, I went to id Software's website, and they were like, yeah, you want Wolfenstein 3D legally? Give us $20. And it's like, $20? Are you out of your mind?
But I thought this was an important game. I thought this was a big
It's not
part of
worth
gaming history.
$20.
Oh, I see how the die rolls. I see how you roll.
Yeah, exactly. So, id Software announced that they were, this is huge, pretty much putting not just some, but all of their games ever on Steam as of immediately. Right now, you can get every id game on Steam right now, this second. They're there. And you can buy them and they work. And not only can you buy them individually, like for example, let's see, Wolfenstein 3D costs $5. There you go. That's a nice price. But you can buy them in packs. They have like an all Quake pack that has all the Quakes, an all Doom pack that has all the Dooms, an all Wolfenstein pack that has all the Wolfensteins, etc., etc. And those packs are pretty discounted compared to buying all the Dooms separately or all the Quakes separately. But they also have the Everything Super Pack, which, if you buy it, it costs you $70. And if you had bought all the games it includes individually on Steam, that would cost $214.
Now think of that, $70. That's what I paid for Zelda 2 when it came out. The day it came out.
Just Zelda 2.
Just Zelda 2.
Let me read the list of things you're getting for your $70. You ready? Every Commander Keen. Doom 3, the really new Doom 3. Doom 3 Expansion, Resurrection of Evil. Doom 2, Final Doom. Heretic with the expansion. Hexen 2, Hexen something else expansion. Master levels for Doom 2. Quake 2, Quake 2 expansion, another Quake 2 expansion, Quake 3.
There were Quake 2 expansions?
There was Quake 2 Mission Pack Ground Zero and Quake 2 Mission Pack The Reckoning.
I'll bet those are awful, because I gotta say, Quake 2 was not a game. Quake 1 wasn't even a game. The single player was garbage. Those games existed solely to be modded into better games.
Pretty much. Quake 3 Arena, Quake 3 Team Arena, Quake Mission Pack 1, Quake Mission Pack 2. Wow, expansions for Quake 1. Look at that. Return to Castle Wolfenstein. That's the newer Wolfenstein with the flamethrowers and stuff. Spear of Destiny, which is the sequel to Wolfenstein 3D. It's basically the same as Wolfenstein 3D, only really hard maps. And Ultimate Doom and Wolfenstein 3D. $70, but is more. If you buy it now and you don't hesitate...
You sound like an infomercial.
I know, right? If you buy it now and you don't hesitate, that's $63, not $70.
Now, while I am not personally excited about it, this is a big deal, and most of you out there should probably buy this.
I couldn't resist. I was just like, well, now or never, buy. The only thing that's missing here is the new Quake 4, which I guess is not, it's not made by id, so it's not going to be on here. But a lot of the things on here aren't actually developed by id. Like those Quake 2 expansions are made by other developers, and Heretic and Hexen are made by other developers, but... Oh, well, I guess that doesn't count. I don't know.
Now, the reason I personally don't care is just that, one, I own all these games already.
I don't own all these games, at least not legally.
The only ones I don't own legally are the Commander Keens. So if nothing else, I'm going to buy all the Commander Keens.
The ones that I own legally are Ultimate Doom.
Is that it? Because I bought Doom.
Yes.
I got the shareware, and
That
I
was
liked
it. The Ultimate Doom is Doom 1 with that extra mission at the end.
I bought Doom 1, then I bought Doom 2. I bought Final Doom later.
I didn't buy Doom 2, I didn't buy Final Doom, I didn't buy Wolfenstein.
I bought Quake 1, then I installed GL Quake. I bought Quake 2.
I've never bought any Quakes.
I bought Quake 3.
No.
I guess I never owned Doom 3 or any of those, but...
Yeah, the only game on here I've ever legally purchased before now was Ultimate Doom, even though I've played almost all of these games.
You pirating ass! I was like the king of pirates in high school, and yet I bought all those games.
And yeah, the only one I bought was Ultimate Doom, which is Doom 1 with one extra level at the end. Well, not one extra level, one extra whole campaign.
But the thing is, not only do I own all these games, but they all work just fine in Wine, and I got them all in Linux natively and all that business. I can just play them anytime I want already. I have everything I need, and in fact, I have the exact same Doom, Doom 2, Quake, and Quake 2 directories that I originally installed.
Aren't those on a crashed hard drive?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because I copied stuff off that hard drive long before it crashed.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
The only things I lost were all the documents and things I didn't care about. When I made my new computer, I copied all the data that I needed to use regularly, which meant, all my games.
Right, so
I've got all the mods and everything that aren't going to be in here. And two, this pack doesn't come with any sort of additional or enhanced multiplayer, which is the only reason I would care.
Well,
I would pay hundreds of dollars.
Basically, you want something that doesn't exist.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's kind of like I want a cell phone that has X things in it. Because said cell phone does not exist in this world, I don't buy a fancy
That's like
cell
going
phone.
to the store, right? You're going to the classic car store, and you're buying like a 1950s Corvette, and you're saying, hey, where's the fucking cruise control, man? That's basically what you're saying.
No, not at all. Because the thing is, if these were released on Steam and they had put any effort into putting a layer between the old networking crap of these games, which many of them are internet enabled anyway, and made it so I could just play Doom against people in Steam or run servers or something, I would pay a lot of money because I'm fucking awesome at Doom 2. Say what you will about any other video game skills I have. There are very few people who can beat me in a Doom 2 deathmatch.
Anyway, basically, the question I had when this came out, the only thing that worried me was, how are they going to get these games to work in Windows XP or Vista? I mean, these are old DOS games. If you just try to run them, they don't work. Did they patch them? Did they rewrite them to work in Windows? Because actually, my version of Doom that I bought, that I was just talking about, ran in Windows 95. It came with Doom 95. This doesn't come with Doom 95. So I don't know how they got these DOS games to work. What did they do? And Rim was like, oh man, they rewrote them all to be all modern. And I'm like,
no, I wasn't. I was saying I hope that's what they did.
Yeah, anyway.
Because all I wanted was multiplayer through Steam. That is the only thing I cared about.
Well, anyway, what they did is they basically took DOSBox, the thing that you would have to use on your own to make these things work.
Well, except the ones that just run in Linux.
Right. Well, except the ones that also just run in, some of them, but...
What?
What? You said just run in Linux. You threw me off.
Because they do.
Well, it's Steam. It's only on Windows. Linux has nothing to do with it.
No, I'm just saying that, Quake just runs in Linux fine.
Yes, but the point is, for all the games included in this pack that do not just work in Windows already, the DOS games, they basically put DOSBox in there and specially configured it to make sure it works just right to save you the trouble. And when you run the game, it opens up DOSBox and then opens up the game. It's pretty funny.
Now, in the very least, that gives me hope. I kind of am thinking about just buying this anyway because while it doesn't have the multiplayer I want, this pack does offer one important thing. And that is, I can know for a fact that pretty much everyone out there will be using the exact same version of these games as the Steam version. So if I cobble together or set up some sort of way of multiplayering over the internet with these things, which isn't that hard to do, I've done it before in DOSBox, I'll be able to play against all you fools in Doom 2 Deathmatch, which is my only goal.
Yeah, it's. I personally think it's just too much trouble, and no one cares, and that's why they didn't bother. You're probably the only one in the world who wants to play Doom 2 Deathmatch.
I don't know. It's really fun to play that. Plus, remember that Gen game we used to play? That Quake 2 mod that basically had the Wolfenstein guy, the Quake guy, the Quake 2 guy, and the Doom guy?
Of course, this is all correct, but as long as actual, newer, better FPS multiplayer games exist, like the Team Fortress 2 that's coming out real soon.
I believe you mean
Counter-Strike.
Counter-Strike, because
Right?
Counter-Strike is still the most played FPS.
Yes, while those things exist, why there's just no point to play Doom 2 multiplayer.
Oh, yeah, well, because, while Mario 64 exists, there's no reason to ever play Mario 1.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like, in terms of a multiplayer competitive game, why
I'd
would
rather
you
play ice hockey multiplayer than any modern hockey game.
That's a different game, though. I'm talking about why would you play the game, the Mario Tennis for the N64 when you could play the GameCube Mario Tennis?
Well, in this case, I have to say that other than Serious Sam, no other FPS has ever had the feel of Doom.
That's true, because no other FPS really tries to be the run-around shooting senselessly game. They always either try to be the slow and careful ones, or, Half-Life awesome cinematic types.
Well, not just that, but in terms of the speed, because Quake 2 and Doom were super fast, and you ran really fast, and the game was not terribly realistic. It was just fun. And, when all the threes came out of these games, they were really kind of slow, and it really changed the way the games played. The games that I'd play with, the FOV 170 and my mouse sensitivity crazily twitching around, barely even looking at the screen.
Yeah, while
I like that action. That's my favorite
while
kind of FPS.
I do enjoy an FPS where all you do is run around shooting stuff like a Serious Sam, I must say that the days of the FOV blah and the really kind of hacked up engines with all the, ghetto duct tape all over the game, while I'm nostalgic for those days, I'm glad they're over.
I will say one thing, and that one thing is natural selection.
Natural selection was not duct tape.
Had they not fucked up the gorge and broken the animation so it didn't jump properly and it jumped in this weird kind of broken way because there's no jump animation, that game wouldn't have been half as fun.
Okay.
Plus, babblers. Babblers.
Yes, babblers.
So, there wasn't really any other video game news I wanted to talk about because most of it, as always, is rumors and bullshit. But I want to talk about one of these bullshit rumors.
Oh, bullshit rumor, you say?
So, Joystick announced that someone from Best Buy or someone hanging out pointed out that you could go to Best Buy's website and click somewhere and pre-order Rock Band for the PS3. And it was $60. All right. And according to the people in their screenshots of all this, it says, and I quote, included, drum, guitar, and microphone peripherals enable players to perform music together. Emphasis added on the word included.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. $60 for the whole game and all the peripherals.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to work out for you real well.
Well, the thing is, people are saying that this was on the Best Buy website. So, of course, Joystick broke the news, and a million people tried to pre-order it, and Best Buy, strangely enough, made that page disappear right quick.
Huh, what do you know?
And of course, there's now the internet outrage of, yeah, fuck Best Buy. They'd better give me it for $60. God damn it. It's their fault.
What
blah,
the
blah.
fuck? What the fuck, people? And because a company is messing around with their website, somehow you're entitled to get something at a huge discount? Did they make... I don't get it.
The thing that's on Joystick, one of the first comments here, and this is modded up as far as you can mod something up. Businesses take advantage of consumers every day. Whenever consumers get a chance to stick it to big business, I say go for it. Meanwhile, all the buried comments are things like, God, how cheap are you guys? Or if you actually like this game, why don't you pay what it's worth?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know. What else is there to say? People are fucking stupid. But also, the only thing I can say bad about Best Buy in this case is why do companies mess around with their website with stuff that's not ready yet? What? Freaking, you have a development website. You fiddle around there, and when everything is good to go, only then do you put it on the real website. There's no reason from a technology standpoint that any public person on the big internet should be able to get to anything on your website that you do not want them to get to, ever. If that happens, you fucked up, and your IT web people are bad.
I can tell you why. Because it didn't hurt Best Buy at all, and they couldn't give a shit.
They couldn't give a shit, but they should still, if they're...
Why? Why do they
IT
care? Remember, enterprise is a different world. In the enterprise IT world, no matter what you say, no matter what argument you make for or against anything, the first question you will be asked is, will this lose the company money? And if the answer is not yes, and the figure is not millions, then the answer is, why should I give a shit?
There is a possibility that if a certain page were to go up, depending on the content of that page, Best Buy could be sued for false advertising.
No, because Best Buy has a very clear policy that there might be typos on their website, and none of that information means shit.
In other words, as long as that agreement's there, these people didn't read it, and fuck them.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because this happens all the time, and there's always this seething internet outrage over it. And I gotta say, you guys might feel great sticking it to the man from Mom's Basement, but...
Someone owes you something because they made a typo, I'm sure.
See, indignance is something that bothers me a lot, but maybe not right under that, because there's a lot of things like rampant obesity and smokers and things.
Those are related to indignance.
Yeah, well, smoking not. Smoking is way down with those annoying things like people with bad teeth or bad breath or whatever.
Yep.
But people who feel entitled, especially when they have no right to their entitlement. Things of the day. So, I kind of like rap. I mean, I don't like gangsta hip-hop, whatever, but I otherwise like rap as a medium or genre or whatever a lot. And nothing gets my goat up in a good way more than rappers dueling, especially if they're dueling well. Just kind of lyrical rhymes and like rap duels. You got served.
It's on.
But our friend Katsu sent us this, and it's along those lines. But suffice to say, it is Mendelssohn versus Wagner, or for all of you Philistines out there, Wagner.
Yeah.
Now, I do have my opinions about the music of both of these people, and I'm generally of the opinion that Wagner was an insane idiot, and I hate all of his operas, despite the fact that they're about awesome things.
Did you see in the news today that apparently, like, in some Russian soldier's attic or something like that, they found... like
Hitler's record collection?
Hitler's record collection?
I did indeed see that.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
But I just want to warn you all, if you ever feel the urge to go see live Gotterdammerung,
or any other Wagner kind of opera.
Particularly Gotterdammerung, because it goes on for fucking ever. It just never ends.
Bring your DS.
The battery won't last long enough. Good fucking God, was that the worst thing ever.
Bring a spare battery. And bring an iPod, too.
Bring a pistol and a bullet.
Bring some Geeknights archives.
But, or you can text message with Quagmire. But anyway, this is these two people rapping it out. And I gotta say, it's actually pretty hilarious.
It is pretty funny. All right, so there's an awesome architect by the name of Shigeru Ban. And he makes things as architects do. He makes structures. He makes bridges and churches and museums and houses and things. And he makes them very interestingly. I always wonder how guys like this make money. Like, he made the thing here, the one that drew my attention was he made a bridge out of cardboard. Which I can understand, because, you can make cardboard boxes that you could stand on very easily. Just put them on your floor, stand on them. And not flat ones either, all right? I'm talking like a box with air in the middle. So making a bridge out of cardboard it is not too big a deal. But yeah, he made a bridge out of cardboard. He made a church out of paper. He made a museum out of like shipping containers.
These things are pretty damn impressive looking.
He made a house where 2 walls of the house are just a curtain. That's pretty cool. And he made a whole bunch of other things. And you can find them all with links on this blog page here. You know, if you just keep browsing around, you'll see all of it and you'll learn all about him. But that's pretty interesting. I still have the question, though, is how someone like this makes fucking money. Because
Probably the same
how many
way.
people need cardboard bridges that are hiring him?
I'll bet a lot of it is government grants, either for the arts or for science. You know, maybe the bridge, you could construct this as some sort of an experiment, or check out the fact that I can use this lightweight material to make something strong based solely on the design, all that sort of business. Maybe he's independently wealthy. Maybe he has some sort of patron or benefactor.
Yep. All right, I'll just end by saying the hippies are all over this, of course, because, hey, they're like, woo, a bridge made out of cardboard and paper. Hooray, it's so green.
Maybe we should take this guy up, because ever
Even
since...
though they're probably not thinking about how many trees you had to cut down to make that bridge versus just a bridge made out of logs.
Or the fact that it's going to rain someday.
I mean, think about that. It takes like a whole tree to make a paper, right? So why would the hippies be so happy about a bridge made of cardboard?
What? It takes a whole tree to make a paper.
No, to make a lot, you know. You can,
Okay, for a second, I mean, what do you mean by a paper? One sheet?
No, if you make paper out of a tree, that paper will make less bridge than the log that you turned into paper.
Well, depending on how I mean, say you have some nanomachines to take the atoms out of that paper and turn it into titanium.
You know what I'm saying.
I do.
Yes. So, it just shows, again, another example of hippies, thinking something's green and not really thinking it all the way through.
Wow, I'm really surprised. You took something about an architect making some art and turned it into an anti-hippie thing.
I had to go somewhere with it. I couldn't just leave it at the architect because I didn't have much else to say about it other than it's cool, check it out. So I had to think up one other thing to say.
I didn't have anywhere to go with my thing of the day. That's the only reason I brought up got her fucking Dameron.
The only reason I was able to take it that way also is because this is a hippie blog, and that's why it came to mind.
Hippie blogs.
Yep.
Right. So this was actually reminded to us. That was an awkward way of phrasing that.
You're reminded of this by?
Yes. Well, we brought this up a way back. You know how pretty much 10 times a week we say, man, we could do a whole show about that. Well, someone remembered when we said it about this topic and reminded us to do it. And I couldn't come up with much better. And Scott and I, this is actually a point of contention among us. So tonight, going to talk a bit about FPS Key Bindings.
Inverted verticalness.
Hey, to me, anyone who doesn't use inverted mouse in an FPS is a heathen barbarian.
You're a heathen barbarian for using it. It's not the default for.
It used to be the default. For the longest time, it was the default in a lot of FPSs. It was the default
because in the flight simulator games, it was default.
No, it was the default in early FPSs.
Like which one?
I'm pretty sure it was the default in the original Quake.
I don't think. I'm going to go check on that because I have the original Quake.
Yeah, maybe there was an update that changed it, but we'll see.
I'll go check it. I'm pretty sure it wasn't.
Anyway, you see, way back in the day, I always heard rumors about people would use their mouse to play Doom or whatever.
Well, here, I can start earlier than that. I played Wolfenstein 3D before there were any FPSs other than Wolfenstein 3D, before Doom existed, right? And I liked the game, but it was difficult to play. The reason is because I could either play with the keyboard or with the gamepad or with the mouse. And the way the game was programmed, you had buttons to go forward, backward, turn left, turn right, shoot, open doors, and there was a strafe button. And if you held the strafe button, you could strafe left and right without turning left and right. This was kind of annoying because if I played with just the mouse, you'd have a 3-button mouse with like shoot, open doors, strafe, and you'd have to keep picking up the mouse and moving it forward to go forward a lot. So I'd play with the keyboard. But when I played with the keyboard, turning kind of sucked because I had to turn with the keyboard and I couldn't turn faster when I needed to when there was a bad guy there. And I kind of wanted to shoot with the mouse button. And it just sucked all around. And it continued to suck because I had those same problems up until real 3D FPSs came out and I learned of the keyboard-mouse combination.
See, for some reason, for the longest time, I never thought to put 2 and 2 together. I never thought that I could use both at the same time.
Well, for some reason, like, there wasn't an option to do that.
Well, for Doom, there was.
Yeah, but...
To the first real FPS.
Yeah. But Quake, I guess, is the first real one. Because it was the 3D. It was actually 3D.
It was the first 3D FPS.
Yeah.
But the thing is, from the player's perspective, Doom was 3D.
Kinda.
Yeah,
Not so much.
it looked 3D. You could go up and down,
You
and it
couldn't
worked.
look up and down.
Yeah, you couldn't look up and down, but you could go up and down.
You weren't actually going up or down. You
But
couldn't.
the player didn't know that.
There couldn't be like an imp under you.
Yes, but you know what? The player didn't know that, and it was very difficult for the player to find that out.
I think it was pretty obvious.
Not so much, especially in Doom 2, where they used
Where you had a 2D map that nothing was on top of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But part of that, I mean, the thing is, I don't know why you're so down on Doom then that way.
I'm not down on Doom.
Because Doom
I'm just
felt
saying.
really, really 3D, and a lot of the maps.
I'm just saying it doesn't feel 3D for me. I play Doom and it's.
Well, wait, you're talking about Doom 1, which actually was very 2D.
Also Doom 2.
Did you play all the way through Doom 2?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the later levels, in fact, there was one level that was just a gigantic tower for the most part, and gigantic cities where you'd go up massive elevators to these high elevations, and you look down and see shit.
Yeah. It just didn't really feel 3D to me.
Whatever. But that game, very clearly, there was the option to use the mouse and the keyboard, but I just never thought of that.
I didn't think of it either because none of my friends did it. So why?
Yeah, granted, all my friends sucked.
You looked in the actual options menu. It would always be like, configure the keyboard, configure the mouse, configure your gamepad. It didn't. If it would have said keyboard and mouse on the screen, I would have figured it out, but it never did. So
Well, the other thing was, I remember that god-awful, well, it wasn't that god-awful, Jurassic Park game for the Super Nintendo. I had it, and it always said, if you have the Super Nintendo mouse, you can control the FPS parts with the mouse. And I was always excited about that. And I finally got Mario Paint one day, and I immediately plugged that mouse in.
And it sucked.
Well, I remember trying to move forward by scroll the mouse forward, pick it up, pull it back, scroll the mouse forward, pick it up, pull it back, and the dinosaurs just fucking ate me.
Exactly.
But one day, I decided to use the mouse and the keyboard. And on that day, I used one setup of keyboard and mouse where my fingers were on everything. And I've used that exact same setup in every FPS from that day until today, and I continue to use it.
Yeah, basically what happened to me is I was playing, I think, Shogo Mobile Armor Division, which came for free with my Logitech Wingman gaming mouse when I got my Pentium 3 450 in 1999.
Oh, 98.
That was an actual 3D FPS. It's actually a pretty cool game if you can find it, because it's like an anime with an anime plot and a lot of anime references. And half the FPS levels, you're in a robot, and half the FPS levels, you're on your own. And it's actually really fun. I'm going to go play that. Ooh. Anyway, in that game, I was playing it using my old Doom Wolfenstein controls, and it didn't work out too well. Because, my habit was always to... if I got a new PC game, I just completely deleted whatever default control configuration they gave me and put my own in there, because that's what I wanted.
Now, that's what I also always did.
Yep. But I didn't know so much about the 3D FPSs in 1999 because I had been using a 486 up until then, which couldn't handle them. And so I kind of fucked it up. And when I realized I couldn't play the game so well, I sort of played with the default configuration just once, and I didn't like it because it was a WASD business, and I liked using the arrows where the up and the down were directly on top of each other instead of the WASD where the W is slightly to the left. And but I learned about the mouse keyboard combination. Even if the only button on the keyboard was the forward button and the back button, that was enough. Hell, I could just, I guess strafe left and strafe right also. But you really only need 4 buttons and the mouse, and I can play most FPSs.
I guess for me, I was just really lucky in that the setup I used, mostly by chance, ended up having enough keys at my disposal to where no matter how complicated an FPS got, I mean, I used the same freaking setup in Tribes 2 that I used in Doom, and it worked perfectly for me.
Yeah, see, I'd use the arrows, the actual arrow keys on the keyboard, and then I would use, like, the control that was pretty close to the arrows and the shift above that and the some of the lower left numpad keys.
Yep, like insert and end.
And, like, the page down and the end and the insert, and I would use, like the 0 on the calculator part. I used all those buttons, the enter, and it was pretty good because the arrows were sort of separated from everything else, so it was like arrows. And then when I needed extra stuff, which I didn't need too often because on my mouse, which is 3 buttons, right, I could, change weapons, I could jump, duck, and shoot. I only needed, like, the secondary attack and the use item on the keyboard, and that was it. So to control and shift, I'm with my pinky finger on the keyboard, I'm good. And I didn't really play any complicated FPSs that required any more buttons for a very long time.
See, I think what did it for me was mostly the fact that because I had an internet connection and a cable modem, I had access to a lot of online play. So as a result, like with Quake 1 and Quake 2, I played a lot of those Mega TF, Weapons Factory, Action Quake mods that, for anyone who's played those games, you needed like 30 keys bound to things or you couldn't play for shit.
Yeah, that's why those games aren't around anymore.
Yeah, I mean, those were games where I had to write complicated scripts to do basic in-game functions.
Yeah. Nowadays, the game should be doing that shit for you, and they do.
In fact, I do want to say that in Quake 2, remember in Quake you had the offhand grenade where you could throw a grenade but still have your weapon up? Quake 2 didn't have that. I wrote a script that effectively, through a lot of somewhat dubious but perfectly non-cheating legitimate means, allowed me to have an offhand grenade.
Awesome.
Even to the point that I could hold it down and kind of cook it before I threw it.
And there was one actually complicated 3D game that wasn't technically an FPS where I did need a lot more keys, and that game was Descent.
Oh, Descent.
Descent 2 and Descent 3. But in those games, I either used the joystick throttle combination, in which case there was no keyboard or mouse to be seen, or I used all keyboard, where I would use the numpad as sort of the move my ship around and look around, and I would use the keyboard where all the letters were for all the weapons and the items and the gizmos.
Well, Descent was really a unique game in the sense that it was free space, but games like TIE Fighter were also free space, but TIE Fighter had the constant forward momentum, and it felt a lot more like you were flying a plane than a spaceship.
Yep.
It was a fanciful spaceship, I guess, but in Descent, I guess it was more realistic in that there was a lot more spin around, go backwards. You're flying like backwards down a corridor, shooting up at something.
This is the thing about Descent, right? Because in a normal FPS, how can you move? You're a guy with feet usually, so you can go forward, backwards. You can rotate left, rotate right, jump, duck, and strafe left and right. And that's about it. You can do some of them in combination, so you can like rotate left as you strafe right to sort of pull back or you know, you can duck and creep forward and turn left at the same time, but it's not all that complicated. In Descent, you could go any direction. So check this out. You could go forward, backwards. You could rotate the left and right. You could rotate up and down, you know. You could move your ship up, move it straight down, move it straight left and straight right. So you could strafe in any direction, rotate in any direction, and move forward and backward. And when you combined a lot of those things together, you could actually pull off very complicated aerial maneuvers, some of which were essential to killing any human opponents.
Man, that was a fucking good game.
Yeah, I got Descent 3 and Descent 2. We go play it.
I have Descent 3 as well. I got the CDs laying around somewhere.
We could play that.
Maybe we
It's
should.
a Windows 95 game.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah. So, I don't know. I guess we could talk about, because I like I said, I use kind of a weird setup. So I don't know if I should let Scott go first or if I should go first.
I changed my setup recently, actually.
See, the thing is, I started with this default setup. I think it was some game I played used this, like the basic setup as the absolute default that you could possibly have. And I was definitely influenced by the fact that if you look at the comma and the period keys on a keyboard, they have the left and the right carets. They're like left and right arrows. And I just felt like that should be strafe left and strafe right. And that kind of, like, my whole thing's centered around those two keys.
Not bad. Not bad.
And I think the fact that by default, a lot of games use spacebar as jump.
Yeah, a lot of games did use spacebar as jump, but Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, I think, used spacebar as open door.
Yeah, I think they
but
did.
That was before the days where there was a jump, though. You couldn't jump in those games.
Yep. See, the real thing was, though, I started with this kind of rudimentary but random chance setup. But as I started playing these Mega TF and Quake, Weapons Factory, whatever games, and I started needing all these other keybinds, I actually sat down with a picture of a keyboard and mapped out, like, this whole complicated system of how I would forevermore deal with any FPS I ever needed to have key bindings for. And I've stuck to that system to this day.
Uh-huh.
I actually broke it up into, this will sound silly, but 5 different tiers of functions in games.
Uh-huh.
There's the primaries, and the primaries are the things that by default, if I'm not doing anything else, my fingers are always on the keys to be able to do this.
Move and shoot.
Pretty much move and shoot, jump and strafe and duck.
And use.
No, use is not a primary. Because
there's a lot of using going on in modern games.
Oh, while there is, use is not a primary, because basically when I said the primaries, what I thought was things that I need to be able to do 100% of the time in combination with other things, no matter what. As in, I should always be able to do at least some of these things and things from other tiers at the same time. And they're things that I have to be doing instinctually and without thought, muscle memory. Using, like opening doors, are conscious actions. I have to think, do I want to open this door? Am I prepared for what may or may not be on the other side of this door?
See, but the thing is, the use button is also used for like flicking switches and now grabbing turrets and getting in vehicles.
Yes, and
getting
even
out of
then,
vehicles.
those are conscious actions for me. I do not ever want to do those things automatically. The moment I automatically grab something or jump into a vehicle, my muscle memory might make me do something that my brain knows is not the right action.
It's usually a good idea to do a lot of those things.
Yeah, but anyway, remember, those are the primaries, the raw muscle memory.
All right.
The secondaries are things that I need to be able to do 99% of the time without compromising the primaries. So these are things like swimming, like moving up and down, or movements that aren't always an option. Like, in Half-Life...
see, I don't know why you have the swim buttons. I use jump and duck to swim up and down.
See, I did in Quake. I stopped doing that in Half-Life for some very specific...
But why would you make extra buttons?
Partly because a few FPSs I played didn't let you bind multiple things to the same key.
See, actually, I think in Half-Life, which is most of what I played recently, jump is swim up and duck is swim down.
And also, I used that for cycling and these other things. And not all games did that. And in games where I could move up and down with jump and duck, I used those instead. And also, those were kind of secondary because I didn't need them. And then things like changing weapons and reloading weapons and all those sorts of things.
Thank God for the invention of the scroll wheel, because it sucked before then.
Yes, granted, I don't use the scroll wheel that often because my muscle memory is still to use my next weapon, previous weapon from the way old-ass days of gaming.
I'm all about the scroll wheel.
But I've started to change, and now I use both because the muscle memory will always change with the old way. But if I'm thinking, I'll use the scroll wheel, particularly in Half-Life games. Then there's the tertiaries. These are the primary communications, like talking, team talking, the radio messages that I really, really, really need, things like dropping weapons or buying shit.
Actually, Counter-Strike, drop weapon is a really close-by button for me.
See, it used to be, but not anymore because I'm very economical with my bullets, and I will almost never run out of bullets and still be alive. If I run out of bullets...
See, I would do it to pick up a better weapon, not to be because I'm out of bullets.
Oh, yeah, but that's still a tertiary thing as far as I'm concerned, because much more prime is being able to move, shoot, get out of the way, duck, and use a door.
Yeah, but, there just aren't so many buttons, so putting drop weapon close by isn't too hard.
Now, the 4th and 5th tiers, like the 4th tier was pretty much all the weird esoteric stuff, like building a turret in a game, or dropping the special grenade that you prime, or switching to the special weird-ass weapon that you don't use all the time, all that stuff. And beyond that, the final tier were non-muscle memory, non-important, definitely minor communication. Things like taunts, gorge, whatever, playing music, all that bullshit.
Spray.
So spray. So at this point, I'm gonna just lay out finger by finger exactly how I bind everything. If you're near a keyboard, I'd say you just put your fingers on the keyboard one by one. And I'll warn you, it's kind of weird. Partly because
Grim is weird.
Well, partly because I long ago dropped the idea that just because a key will make me move forward as opposed to back or left or right, it should somehow be in front of or left or right of that button. So right hand on the mouse, obviously. Fingers are pretty much 1, 2, 3 on the first button, the middle scroll wheel, and the third button. So 1, 2, 3. Index finger is shoot. Ring finger is move forward.
You're fucked up.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, that's what Doom was by default.
It was, but no one does that anymore.
I still do.
Yeah, there's a reason they don't do that anymore.
And the middle finger's always resting, always on the scroll wheel.
Because that way, when you move forward, it could mess up your aim.
Well, also because when I'm moving forward or moving back or whatever I'm doing, I can be changing weapons or changing the state of my weapon. Because pushing in that button is either the menu or the alternate weapon always. And that's it. If there's other buttons on a mouse, I refuse to use them.
You suck.
Well, partly because I only touch the mouse with the tip of my thumb. the 3 fingers that are just lightly
It's
resting
like
on the
you
button.
just decide that you want to do things in some weird way that no one else does them, and you decide, and then you like try to claim that that's the best way in the universe.
I'm not saying it's the best way at all.
You do not doing it saying it now, but you do say it often.
No, it's definitely and clearly not the best way. It's the best way for me because as I played over the years, I evolved a lot of muscle memory, and I'd rather capitalize on all those years of FPSing than throw it away and do something differently.
But if you did something differently and built a different muscle memory, in the end, that might be better.
See, I don't think it would be because I'm actually pretty badass at FPSing, all things considered. But the thing is, in general, the way I use a mouse is, unless I'm clicking, I'm only touching it with the tip of my thumb and the tip of my pinky finger. No other part of my hand is ever touching the mouse. My palm never touches the mouse, ever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the way I roll.
No one else rolls that way.
So,
I'm just saying, you're weird.
I warned everyone very clearly that my setup's kind of weird, pretty much from the start.
Yeah. I'm just making fun of you.
On the keyboard, my default primary
Do
configuration.
you have palm mouseophobia of some sort?
No, the thing is, I want to use my fingers. My wrist doesn't really move when I use a mouse because
My wrist doesn't move so much either.
I just use my pinky and my thumb.
Yeah.
And then if I need to click, I touch the mouse with those fingers to click. If I'm in a heated moment, sometimes there's extra pressure from those buttons, but that's just because I get heated. So pinky finger is on the space bar to jump. Ring finger is on the M key to move backwards. Middle finger is on the comma key to strafe left. Index finger is on the period key to strafe right. Thumb is on the Alt key right under there to crouch.
See, I don't use the Alt keys or the Window keys at all anymore because I've noticed that in a lot of Windows stuff really likes to pay attention to the Alt and Windows keys, and I used to use them for things and it wouldn't cause a problem, but now pushing Alt or Windows just seems to cause all sorts of problems randomly in different games. So I don't use them for anything at all ever, no matter what.
See, the way I get around that is, one, I don't have anything bound to Alt anything in Windows by default.
Yeah, it's not that I bind anything to it. It's that it just things happen when you push that
I've
key.
never had anything happen.
I've had things happen.
Two, I don't use the Windows key fucking ever.
Yeah.
On old keyboards, I used to get rid of it or disable it somehow, physically.
Yeah, but there's nothing you could... Too many problems I have slipping and hitting it during an FPS, and then the start menu opens.
See, honestly, I've never done that. I've never accidentally hit the Windows key.
It's happened to me.
Part of it's because I've been using the same setup forever. Like, I could play an FPS, the keyboard could be hidden from me, and I could just play. But that's it. That's my primary setup. And also, you know how most games, tab shows you the score?
Yep.
For me, I always unbind that because I don't want to hit Alt-Tab because I'm holding Alt down a lot.
See, that's one of the things I hate.
So what I did is I bound that to Q instead, and Tab doesn't do anything.
Aha.
That was just something I did long ago because I got killed many a time hitting Alt-Tab in the heat of checking my score, seeing who's still alive on my team in Action Quake OMG.
Yeah, I don't really check the score so much.
So that's it. That's the primary keys. Now, when I need to move stuff, notice how I have these kind of rings of keys outside of that. If I move all my fingers out in a radius, I have this whole other set of keys. Move them out again, and I have another set of keys. And that's why I had this kind of primary, secondary, tertiary idea. Because I can move my fingers one set or two sets to kind of change modes of my fingers. So, without further ado, B and N I use for various things. N is always reload. B is always whatever special thing a game needs other than that, like bandage in Action Quake. And V is always voice. Notice how it's like tears moving out with my pinky finger. K is use. It has been used for as long as there has been a use in any game ever. J and L are either scroll through menus or swim up and down, so they kind of rotate around the K key. Weapon next is always /. Weapon previous is always apostrophe. Grenade or whatever weird thing is always semicolon. T and Y are always talk and team chat. UIOP are always radio commands. Beyond that, it all really depends on the game, so I can't really get into further details.
Yeah.
Because you know how different games have different weird shit you gotta bind to things for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's
Like,
why...
arm the snazaflange, fire the snazaflange, use the tractor beam.
That's why I set the base keys, and then everything else changes game by game, and I kind of just get used to it, you know, if I change my mind all the time.
But all the things I stated, if the game has that function, I always use that key no matter what. And part of the reason is, I can do a lot of things that need to be done simultaneously. So I kind of move my fingers through different tiers, but I can strafe left, crouch, move forward, use and shoot all at the same time if I need to. And I've done things like that in some games.
I can do those things with the default configuration in just about any FPS. You don't need a crazy, weird keyboard configuration to do that.
See, I don't think it's really that weird. It's a very systematic approach that I've used.
Yeah, I think you seem to, I don't know if anyone listening to the show has noticed it, but living with Rim for a long time, he likes to just try to come up with weird solutions that are just way out of the box for different things.
I'm really curious. Like what?
Like all sorts of stuff.
Like what? I'm really curious because this setup, like I said, it came by default just by chance because that's where I happened to start playing FPSs with the keyboard. And then I used that as the core, and I kind of came up with a system that I would use for the rest of my life for the rest of it.
You do that for a lot of things.
Wait a minute. So how is it weird that if I decide that I'm going to do something a lot in my life, I come up with a system to do it better?
Because you're not really, you don't seem to actually scientifically determine what's better. You seem to just do something that makes sense, and you do things that, are not, you usually always pick something that isn't done by a lot of people.
How so? Like what?
Like arranging furniture, you're always...
What?
Yeah. You're always just trying to find weird ways to arrange furniture, weird ways to organize things, or...
I'm curious why you say weird. I mean, I rearranged my bedroom a little while ago, and you know
or
what?
Like whenever something is like, the accepted way of doing something, you'll always try to figure out a weird way of doing it that no one else does.
I'm curious why you say weird. At most, I'd think I try to come up with a better way.
Weird as in out of the ordinary.
How? Like, name anything out of the ordinary I do. I'm really curious.
Pretty much everything.
Like what? Name one thing. Since you said everything, there must be plenty of examples.
Like anytime you're, I don't know.
I'm what?
You do it all the time. I just can't think of anything right now.
I do it all the time.
You do?
I do it with everything. Yet, you can't come up with any examples.
Just because I can't remember a specific example. I'm not just making this up.
I'm really curious.
All our friends are probably like, yeah, he does. And all the people who don't know you are probably like, what the hell's Scott talking about? Rimfund him.
I really don't know, though, because I really don't see where you're coming from. Like, you tried to say this before when I rearranged my bedroom, and you know what? My bedroom's a lot better now than it was before. And Emily agrees because she uses this room all the time.
But the way you have your furniture arranged now is a way that no interior decorator would think to arrange the furniture. It is very strange. Like, you were thinking of doing weird stuff like rotating your desk so it faces into the room.
A lot of secretaries and things do that. That way I could face you while I do the show instead of having my back to you like we do now.
Are you a secretary?
Also, just that way, I was trying to see if I could fit everything along one wall to save a bunch of space. It turned out I couldn't, so instead, I just moved everything to the current configuration. Because there's the thing. I looked at my room and the original setup, and I realized that
This is way off topic. We should put this in a separate show.
Well, I'll just go real quick, because you say this is weird. Everything was around the walls, and all the space in the middle of the room, because it's actually a really big room. It's the exact same size as the living room, minus the 2 closets. And the middle of the room really wasn't used. I don't do stuff in my room, so that middle space was just kind of wasted. I rearranged my room to use the middle part of the room more, and as a result, I fit a lot more shit in here.
So, back in the day, when I originally figured out, in Shogo Marble Armor Division to use the keyboard and the mouse, the default was like WASD something something. And I said already that I didn't like that because I felt that the W should be directly, the up should be directly above the down. And I'd been using the arrows for every other game up until then. And I wanted to continue using the arrows. So I moved it over to the arrows. And this wasn't a problem on my old IBM keyboard because next to the arrows there was the numpad and the page down and the end and all that business.
Wait. What kind of IBM keyboard? Is this one of those clackety-clackety ones?
I think Alex has it now. It wasn't clackety-clackety. It was like an IBM something, and it was a standard keyboard layout, but it had these like 4 buttons on the right-hand side that could be programmed to do anything. And it was actually pretty cool because those buttons just worked, unlike a lot of the weird buttons on keyboards today. And actually, Alex, do you still have that keyboard? I kind of want it back. It's a nice keyboard. I don't know what happened to it. Anyway, it was a PS2 keyboard also. Anyway, more recently, basically after PC gaming died for me after RIT, I stopped getting the standard PC keyboard layout. I didn't get the 104 key keyboards with the numpad on them and all that jazz. I got the Happy Hacking keyboard, which I highly recommend for anyone who uses VI or isn't a cool programmer in any fashion. And the Happy Hacking keyboard is special because it has a control where the caps lock should be, and it doesn't have a numpad, and it's really small, and it doesn't have dedicated F keys. You have to hold down the FN button and then push 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to do F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, etc., etc. It's not a normal keyboard, but for someone like me who primarily uses the computer with a lot of keyboard shortcuts involving the control button, Linux, and VI especially, the Happy Hacking keyboard is a godsend. Then came a problem when I wanted to play some FPSs again after a long drought of FPS playing, and I only had this Happy Hacking keyboard in front of me with the arrows. It does have arrows, but they're small, and they're in the bottom right, and they're not next to a numpad, and you really can't play an FPS with them at all.
Yep. See, the thing is, while I kind of like the Happy Hacking keyboard, when I saw it, and actually I have this problem now in that a lot of modern keyboards kind of move stuff around a little bit. If a keyboard is not exactly the same, at least in terms of the relative distances between things, as my original keyboard that I first played Doom on, I can't play FPSs at all. I just get totally fucked.
I agreed with that to a large extent. These Logitech keyboards now where like the delete key is vertical and double size, fuck those. These keyboards where they like have like the space bar split into two pieces, fuck those. The ergonomic bendy hump keyboards where the entire keyboard is split in half, fuck those also. These new Mac keyboards with like these giant square buttons with huge caverns between them, fuck them as well. Only the normal, I mean, my laptop keyboard I can deal with, even though a lot of other people seem to complain the keys are small. But it's basically Happy Hacking keyboard, or the layout has to be the way that it's always been. If it's changed too much, I can't deal with it. I mean, at least, especially if it's not a laptop, you know. A laptop I can understand to an extent compressing the keyboard, you know, to fit on there. But other than that, why? Why mess it up? So, anyway, I had this Happy Hacking keyboard. And I wanted to play an FPS, and this is problematic without the arrows and my original setup. So I basically had to come up with a setup right away, and I figured, oh, well, everyone else uses this WASD business. Why not? It can't be that bad. And it hasn't been that bad, despite my, you know, I guess it was sort of a small bit of OCD in me that wanted the W to be directly above the S. But really, it doesn't matter. And when my fingers are over there, my pinky now has access to like the shift, the control, and the tab, and that's really useful. There's a whole bunch of buttons right there. I got the Q and the E right there. And I've got like the F for the flashlight and the R for the reload, and the ZXC are right under, and my thumb can be on the space bar, and there's just a whole mess of buttons. But in general, what I do is I use WASD for forward left, forward back, strafe left, strafe right. R, I'll reload. I'll use the caps lock, which is actually control on my keyboard. I'll either use it for like secondary weapon, or in a game like NS, I'll use it for like to bring up the menu, because I use the menu in NS a lot. Sometimes I use it for duck, depending on the game. Who knows? But unlike Rim, I use a lot of buttons on my mouse. On my mouse, I got shoot, I got jump, I got duck with my thumb, I got change weapons with the scrolly wheel. I got, like, push in the scrolly wheel to, like, toss a weapon away or maybe throw a grenade or something. You know, I got as much I can fit onto the mouse as possible, because the mouse, I got a lot of fingers, and there's a lot less buttons on the mouse. I mean, I got the same number of fingers on the mouse as on the keyboard. So, and the keyboard has a lot of buttons that I can handle with just 4 or 5 fingers. And if the mouse has 3 buttons, that's pretty inefficient as far as I'm concerned, because I could be hitting just as many buttons with one hand as with the other, because the moving has to do with my arm and not with my fingers. So, you know, I have a Logitech MX-1000. It has a lot of buttons, and I use most of them when FPSing.
So I guess my problem is just that the only part of my hand that moves at all are my fingers, and I need my pinky and my thumb to control the mouse. So I really don't have any more fingers to be on the mouse.
Yeah, see, I have my whole hand is on the mouse. I move the mouse with my arm, not with my wrist. My whole arm moves around, but it doesn't move much, you know, because I have such high sensitivity. You want to talk about sensitivity, or have we talked about that before on the show?
I don't know. That might be worth a different discussion altogether.
Yeah, I think we have talked about it on the show and briefly before.
I mean, I played high sensitivity back in the day. I shifted to low sensitivity in these realistic games or whenever I was sniping. In fact, I had a script that when I zoomed in would change the sensitivity in Quake 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I used to use, you know, normal default sensitivity. Then I went through a time period where I cranked it up all the way. Now I just crank it up most of the way because I think what's happened is just with the way things have progressed, cranking it up all the way is just way too much, especially because you have these accelerators that multiply by each other, and the mouse does become uncontrollable when I turn everything up in the mouse driver, in the game, in every possible place. It's just, you move the mouse like a millimeter and it flies away, and you can't move it a small distance at all. But yeah, because I have high sensitivity and because I use my arm to move the mouse, all my fingers on my mouse are able to do things, and my mouse has many, many buttons, which I can also bind those buttons to actual keys on the keyboard, which helps a lot in games that don't allow for more than 3 mouse buttons, which is really cool. Because, my left hand is on the left side of the keyboard, so, like, J, K, L aren't doing anything. So if I put J, K, and L on my mouse, I can trick the game into thinking that, J, do this, and it's actually a mouse button. When I'm it's the game thinks it's J.
So now I got to say, I definitely respect the WASD, partly because, pretty much most gamers use it. That was like the standard, gold standard, whatever back in the day, and a lot of people still use it to this day. The only gripe I had with it was just that I like a setup where there's only one direction to move my fingers when I need to spread out. But in that system, I feel like I could go up, left, down, or right, and there's always keys in every direction. And I felt like that was just too much to deal with.
See, that's the thing is I don't actually spread out so much. I use as few keys as possible, and I only bind keys for the absolutely most essential functions, the things that I'm going to do often. If I'm not going to do something often, if it's something I'll do extremely rarely or only do, when I'm like sitting still and it's completely safe and there's no danger, I don't bind a key for it and go in the menu or use the console, or I bind it, leave it as the default key, and then, look up what the key is, in the middle of the game, and then go and push it with, like, my one finger on its own. What's something I don't really need too often? I don't know. I'm trying to think of games that have weird things. Like in Tribes 2, you had that menu where you could, like, customize your different loadouts. I would use, like, the farthest away button on the keyboard that I would never use to do that.
Yeah, well, because once I had the loadout set up, I wasn't going to tweak them in the game. That's crazy.
Yep. But, stuff like that. I just use the farthest away button possible. I don't, sort of branch out with my fingers while I'm playing. I pretty much only use the pinky on the shift control tab, my two or three fingers for WSAD, QERF, and maybe, like, G and 1, 2, 3, 4, if I need them. And all the buttons on my mouse and space. And that's enough for pretty much every FPS out there, except for, the crazy old Quake mods, which I don't play.
Now, when it comes to mouse inversion or not, that's a big point of contention between the two of us. For me, I've always used, any time I am ever controlling a first-person view of anything ever, no matter what it is, it has to be inverted, be it a joystick, a puck, a trackball, a mouse, a keyboard, whatever.
Just so you know what Rim's talking about, what he's saying is that when he moves down with his mouse in an FPS, the aim actually goes up. So to shoot a guy higher up, he pulls the mouse towards himself. And when he wants to shoot a guy down below, he moves the mouse away from himself. But it's only a vertical inversion. So left is left and right is right, but up is down and down is up.
It's the way airplanes and things are flown. And
yes.
Anytime I'm ever controlling anything in the world from a first-person view, if it's not inverted, I just cannot deal with it at all.
See,
I absolutely get fucked. And there have been games, particularly on some consoles, that don't let you change that, and I cannot play them, period.
See, I do understand that feeling, because when I play any sort of flight simulator or any sort of flying vehicle like TIE Fighter or Descent or, I don't know, any sort of game that actually, like Virtual On, or any sort of game where there's a control stick or flying vehicles, like, I need to have it inverted. I need up to make the ship, if I push the stick forward or move the mouse forward, I need the ship to crash into the ground. And if I pull back, I need the ship to take off into the air. That's how I need it to be. But in an FPS where I am, even a third-person FPS, I could invert and I'd be fine. But in a first-person shooter where I am a guy with feet walking around shooting with a gun in front of me, I need up to be up and down to be down, left to be left and right to be right, because the way I play those games in my mind is the goal is to click on the bad guys to kill them. So it's like my cursor on my screen, and I'm trying to click on the bad guys. So the way because it's basically, I think the difference is that in a flying game or a vehicle, the inversion, you're sort of, it's also the movement of the vehicle that you're controlling as well as the aim. Whereas in the FPS, the mouse is just the aim. And because it's just the aim, and I'm just clicking on bad guys' heads, or trying to click on their heads, I can't invert, or else I get screwed up.
See, for me, I still have the feeling that I'm just clicking on their heads and that's all I'm doing. I mean, part of it might just be that mouse position, like the direction I move a mouse, is so relative that it doesn't matter what direction I point a mouse physically or where it is or anything. I could play an FPS holding the mouse upside down on the desk and I'd be just fine.
Yeah, I'm sure that if I, it's a sort of a muscle memory thing. I'm sure I could easily, if I set to invert, get used to it in a few minutes and then be great after a few hours, of playing. But that's just the way I do it, and that's the way I'm comfortable doing it. I don't think there's actually an advantage or a disadvantage to setting or not setting the inverse vertical on FPSs or any other games.
I would argue that there's a slight advantage in total for using inversion. Now, the argument, when I say slight, I mean slight. My argument is thus. If you pick one way and go with it forever, your muscle memory will probably be better than if you switch at midstream. As we can see with people who switch between QWERTY and Dvorak or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
All flight sims and vehicle things are going to be inverted, just about. And a lot of them don't let you change that. But FPSs, you can usually pick. So on average, there are more, you will run into an inverted thing occasionally in your life. But you'll rarely run into a thing that is not inverted that you cannot force to invert.
But see, that's just the thing, though, is that if I play a flying thing, I can, the inversion is great. I'm like, wee, inversion. It's not, that would be true if somehow by not inverting, I had to play with things not inverted.
No, but see, what I'm saying is, to me, I think you could build up a better total muscle memory of forward is down, backward is up in all interactions with any sort of first-person or third-person thing.
I don't know. It's just like, it's sort of a weird thing where it feels like it's the same amount of muscle memory no matter what, but somehow, like in Tribes 2 is the best example because in that game you would be FPSing and then you would get into a flying vehicle. And I had it set up where when I was in a vehicle, it was inverted. When I was not in a vehicle, it wasn't inverted.
I had it one step further. It was inverted all the time, but when I was running around, I used the mouse. The moment I jumped into a vehicle, I grabbed my joystick. That was so hot. I was like the best Shrike Fighter pilot ever.
The only reason I didn't do that is because no joystick, and also I really don't like any amount of time in switching peripherals, That's why I use so many keyboard shortcuts, because I just hate switching to the mouse. I like to stay on one peripheral as long as I can with minimum switching.
It was worth it to me just to have the almighty power of being able to fly that stupid thing.
I would have liked to fly it with a joystick, but that 1 second of getting my hands up and putting on the joystick, and fearing that someone would kill me while I was doing that was just so terrifying.
I don't know, for me, I did it in that time it took to stand in line and wait and whatever. And if someone attacked me when I was in line for a vehicle...
See, I never waited in line for vehicles.
I often
because
waited
I was
in
afraid.
line.
Because I was also the guy who would go to the enemy camp, see people waiting in line for vehicles, and kill the people standing there like idiots. Yeah. Anyway, and I did it that way, and it was weird. As soon as I got in the vehicle, my brain just flipped over completely, and if it wasn't inverted, I would have had a problem. And then as soon as I get out of the ship, if it didn't uninvert, I would have had a problem.
See, I just seriously can't deal with that. I must have too much invested in inverted to where I just cannot, for the life of me. And I've tried a couple times on games that wouldn't let me switch. I just can't deal with it at all.
It definitely has to do with my eyeballs, though, because if I close my eyes and I don't know if I'm in a vehicle or whatever, then I can do inverted or not equally. It doesn't matter. But if I'm seeing that I'm FPSing, it needs to be non-inverted. And if I see that I'm flying, I need to invert. Or my eyes see that, and they immediately flip my brain in one direction or the other, and I can't deal with the opposite direction.
Now, some people might say, Raymond Scott, how come you didn't talk about joysticks or game pads or game controllers?
Because you don't play FPSs with those things.
And I still, to this day, and I will argue this fiercely and bitterly, maybe not bitterly, because I feel like I'm right, and I think Scott agrees with me, that I don't care how good an FPS is, controlling it with anything that isn't a mouse just feels like this backward, inefficient, terrible way of controlling a game.
Okay, I must say, I do think it is possible to create some sort of new input device that would be good for FPSing.
I agree.
Possibly the Wiimote nunchuck combination seems to have a potential not yet fulfilled, but a potential.
Some sort of VR thing.
Some sort of VR thing. There are many ways you could combine, some sort of input device that would be
But you know what?
good as or better than mouse and keyboard.
A DualShock or a GameCube controller, I don't care how much you practice, I don't think that it has even close to the potential of goodness or control or refined power that a keyboard and mouse combination does.
And I'll tell you why. The reason is, to play an FPS, there are discrete inputs, like shoot. It's either shoot or not shoot. And you have sort of these analog, non-discrete inputs, like aim. Well, where do you aim? Do you aim a little bit? Do you aim a lot? Do you aim way up, way down, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right? And the main key here is that all the discrete inputs are simple. They don't matter. Your gamepad has buttons. You push a button, it shoots. You're all good. It doesn't really matter. As long as your input device has buttons, the discrete inputs are handled. What's hard is the non-discrete inputs, the aiming mostly, but also the moving. And to do better, to have a better time, to have better performance in a game, you need those inputs to be very precise. If pushing, like, for example, if you were to use your keyboard, right, for turning left and right in an FPS, like in the olden days, right, well, how fast would you turn left and right? It would turn left and right at a steady rate. So you couldn't turn around faster or slower.
And if you set it to be faster all the time, you can't slow it down if you need more precise turning.
Yep. So a discrete input is not good for a non-discrete, discrete input mechanism is not good when you're not putting in a non-discrete. You know what I'm saying?
And very simply, the analog stick on any console controller has nowhere near the sheer amount of possible values and inputs and the sheer just elegance, like a lightsaber, of a well-calibrated optical mouse.
A mouse, even a trackball, even the Wiimote, right? Even though it's not even, the Wiimote's not as good as a mouse, are so far and above an analog stick in terms of, being able to point at a spot on the screen or just precision pointing. It doesn't do it. That's not what it does. I mean, if you want to control moving around, yeah, it can do that pretty well because an analog stick is good for moving around in a 3D universe. But aiming in a 3D universe, it is basically worthless. I mean, they've come up with ways to make it better. Playing Halo with an Xbox 360 controller is probably as good as it is, as good as it's going to get as well. They figured out just how to calibrate that stick to make it, I guess, playable.
And remember also, a lot of those games tend to either use some sort of auto-aiming or aim helping, or they'll make it easier to target things, or precision shooting doesn't matter, or things like that. But even then, I can't look around as quickly and naturally in those games as I can with a mouse.
Yeah. I mean, try to turn around. I mean, as much as I like Metroid Prime, and I would say it's not actually an FPS, even though it kind of is, but it's not the same as the other
It's an FPA or an FPE.
Yeah, it's something like that. You can't really turn around quickly. It just doesn't happen.
Now,
and there's a reason they have a lock-on and an auto-aim on that game and all the other games like
I really look forward to the day where Xbox Live is set up to where I can play Halo whatever on my computer with my Windows Vista against all those kids with Xboxes. Because I really think that an above-average player with a keyboard and mouse will cream even an expert player with the best console setup that isn't a keyboard and mouse he'll ever be able to get anytime.
The average over time, I believe, will show that keyboard and mouse players will have a huge advantage because they have the ability to the fact that they can turn around quickly. I mean, think about how fast you can turn around with the gamepad. As fast as the game goes, pushing the analog stick all the way to the right or all the way to the left.
Back in Quake 2, I had a button I could hit that did a perfect 180 that I used often.
But with my mouse, I can always move the mouse farther. I can always pull it faster. I can always do more with the mouse. With the analog stick, the most you can do is push it all the way in one direction, and that's the end of the line. You can't make it go any faster than that. And the least you can do with the analog stick is move it as little as you can. With the mouse, I can exactly move it at any movement of my arm. I can reach all the way across the desk. And plus, since I control the sensitivity, the higher I crank the sensitivity, the more I can do. Whereas with the analog stick, you're limited because you can only move it in so many ways. And that's why a mouse is better than an analog stick for FPSing.
I defy anyone to argue against that. I'm dead serious. We've had this argument with a few people before, and invariably, no one has actually defended the position beyond the final argument. They've always given up.
My anecdotal experience has been that people who began FPSing with, consoles and Halo or maybe GoldenEye and never really participated in the Quake, Counter-Strike, FPS Golden Age days are the people who play with the gamepads. And, maybe they don't even know how to use mouse and keyboard. And the people who are mouse and keyboard are the people, anyone who's ever done mouse and keyboard and played some FPSs on PCs for real agrees with us pretty much. I've never found anyone who was like a PC FPSer using mouse and keyboard saying that gamepads were better. No one has ever, I've never seen anyone convert in that direction, but I have seen gamepad people convert to the PC direction in terms of what is the better FPS control mechanism.
I think that's really all we have to say about this. If you thought this was boring, you don't care about FPSs, well, you might want to suggest more shows because this was in the forum. Someone very specifically asked for it.
Yep. We're going to have a pretty exciting show next week, actually.
Oh, actually, yes, we are.
Oh, man.
I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Yep.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.